I felt like I had to hide. Like it was just expected of me as a spouse to just be okay with the fact that he deployed and just to leave it as that. But I wasn't all the time. You know, I had my worries at night, and I felt like, should I talk to someone about this? Can I call a friend? Can I, talk to another person about this?
Today is part 2 of our interview with Erin Gagnon. She'll be sharing her journey and experiences as a military spouse, the importance of community, and how she overcame challenges. Let's jump right into it.
Well, thanks for joining us again, Erin. I'm excited about this part, as we just discussed, because I want to hear it from the spouse's side. But if we were friends in high school, who was Erin, and how did you become a military spouse?
It's a good one. So I was an overachiever, 4.0, constantly involved in like every single club, theater, music, and the complete opposite of my husband. He was the jock, and I mean, he was good grades too, but not the overachiever. But so that was me. Like I said, I've always wanted to be a CEO, so my mindset was get good grades, do a lot, volunteer, and get to college and just keep going. And then I met my husband in high school. It was his senior year as my junior year, and it clicked. I was like, this guy is incredible, and he wants to serve his country, and he has such great leadership, and he's just someone I want to be around. Like, he's a lot of fun, a really good friend. And he went off to boot camp, and I wrote to him every single week. And then I asked him if he could make it to my senior year homecoming, and he graduated 24 hours before the homecoming and flew home and came in his uniform and everything and took me to my homecoming, and I asked him out 2 days later. So that's how I became a military spouse, because we've been dating ever since.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, being a military spouse is not an easy thing. I wasn't married when I was in, but I saw a lot of what my peers went through and their spouses, and it's not an easy thing. What was it like for you knowing that your husband could get deployed, and then when he does get deployed, what's going through your head as he's gone every day, and dealing with that as a military spouse?
I think for me, the hardest part was just acceptance at first. When we started our whole military career, it didn't really hit me at first. It just kind of felt like we were married and he was going to work, and then the training started happening, and then he came home one day and he's like, yeah, I'm deploying in a few months or something. I'm like, oh no, this is really happening. And the conversations you have pre-deployment, like you have to have those difficult conversations, and what could possibly terribly happen to him and what that means for me, or other things like that. And it is difficult, but if you have good communication with your partner, it's something that you just talk through and you work through. And I think the biggest thing for me was being able to create a life that when he was gone, I still had my own kind of, Erin has her life, she has her career, she has her friends. And that was my support system when he was gone. And so I had my job during the day, I had my friends on the weekends, and I had my hobbies. The next thing you know, he's home. And so it is difficult, and it's hard to not get your brain wrapped around the news of what's going on and just focus on, when you can talk to them. And for me, it was just email here and there. But that email made my week. But yeah, it's difficult, but there's a special strength of a military spouse of just, not knowing what's going on and not being able to handle anything in your control, and just being able to accept it. And like I said, the longest time was acceptance for me. And once I was able to just breathe and accept that this is what we chose, I said yes too, and take it day by day.
So was there a support network that you were able to tie yourself into as well, outside of work, and when you're on the weekends? You're probably trying to keep your mind busy, right? So you don't have, like you said, you don't have to think about it all the time. Yeah,
I had some coworkers that were really great and a backbone for me, and then I had another spouse. Her and I definitely bonded during the deployment. Her husband was also same deployment, and we pretty much got together every single weekend. And it was California, so we went out to a brewery or just somewhere outside all the time and checked out wineries. We had fun, but just we knew what each other was going through. And even if we didn't talk about it, we just knew it was difficult, and we made each other laugh and just kind of forget about it for a few hours.
Sure.
So that was nice.
So was it easy for you to find a job when you were out there? Because basically, a lot of spouses, you're going to a base where you've never lived before.
Right.
You don't have any family. What was that like when you first got there?
It was really hard. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be until I kind of started getting a lot of rejections. And I think the hardest thing at first was we actually went to 29 Palms first, just for a few months. Ryan had a few months of training, and then we were headed to Pendleton. So that was such a weird transition because I wanted to get a job, and then we wanted to get a place, but we didn't know where we were going to live, and I'm still living in 29 Palms with him during this transition. So I'm trying to do these interviews, but they were complicated, so I kind of just waited until I got there and I knew where I was going to live, because in California, even if you live 5 minutes away from a place, it can take you 20 minutes to get there. Or 5 miles, let's just say. It takes you a long time. So I started, looking around and online, LinkedIn and all these other places for job applications and applying nonstop. And I wouldn't hear back from anyone. So I'm like, it's okay, that's normal, just keep trying, keep going. And so I started getting some calls, and I would go to these interviews, and they would look at my resume, and there would be kind of some gaps because of all the moving. And being close to Pendleton, they figured it out, right? So then they would kind of go, so what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? You plan on staying around. I'm like, well, what's yours? Do you have a 5-year plan? Do you have a 10-year plan? Of course I would love to grow with the company, but does anyone know what their plan is? Things change. And it got to the point where I almost had to hide that I was a military spouse as much as possible just to get hired or just to be looked at. And that was hard because it's not something you should hide. You should be really proud of, because there are a lot of great characteristic traits that come with being a spouse. We have to think on our feet all the time. We have to be completely dependable. Our spouses are gone all the time, so it's up to us to just get everything done. And if we can't do it, we need to figure it out, because it's up to us, right? We can handle high stress situations, like our husbands get deployed. Even going on training, that's high risk too, right? So it's just one of those things that we can bring a lot to the table if you even consider us. And so I finally got hired because a place that I worked for, one of the interview co-workers that I worked with, she was a military brat. And so her dad was a Marine, and she witnessed her mom go through what I was going through. And she just was like, no, I want to change this, and I'm going to help another spouse because my mom would be happy I did. So she said, we're going to hire this girl, and it's going to be worth it. And so she gave me my career break, and so thankful for her. And I stayed there till we were done. So it was a few years. But I think there's this negative stigma with military spouses that, they're just going to move. It's going to be a waste of time. Next thing you know, they're just going to be gone and we have to hire someone else. And that kind of happened with me before we moved. We were living here waiting on orders, which, as you know, can always change.
Yep.
And we were told it could take a year, maybe longer. So I got a job. And next thing you know, they're like, oh, wait, we can fit you in this month, so you're going to leave in a month and a half. So it's like, cool. So everything had to change, right? You just adapt and you handle it. So I went to, my boss, and I said, I'm sorry, got the orders, but thank you. I know it's only been a few months, but it's been really helpful, and I'll try to help as much as I can with the transition. And next thing you know, another employee was like, we're never hiring military spouses again. And I'm like, well, that's not good. That's not great. And I felt terrible, and I think that was always in the back of my mind, and why I didn't accept it at first, and why I wanted to hide it, because I felt that shame of causing a problem that I had no control over. But the truth is, whenever you hire any employee, anything can happen, no matter what position they are. And I've seen it. I've seen a company put thousands of dollars in hiring a new surgeon, and months later, it's not for me, I'm leaving. So it can happen at any place and any position. You take a risk by hiring an employee in general, but when you hire a military spouse, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get an incredible employee that is going to work really hard, appreciate, that you gave them the chance, and they're going to show you that you did a really good job hiring them. And who knows, like that might be the place they decide to stay for a few years. It might be only a couple years. Maybe it's a position that they can telecommute with on the next move. You know, there's so many possibilities. And I think this whole negative stigma that, oh, they're just going to move is a ridiculous stigma that needs to be changed.
Absolutely. I love that. That's very well said. So like, obviously we live in a different time today and you're able to work remotely and stuff like that, but how can employers get better at hiring and training military spouses? I mean, because we do live in a remote telecommuting time now, and I think they can be more adaptive to help, you know, military spouses stay employed with their company, because you don't really need to be in person all the time, right?
Right. Yeah, I think the pandemic has taught us that being, you know, mobile is possible and doable. And before that, it was just not thought of. They were totally against it. And when my husband deployed, I asked for a little bit of flexibility with my work because, you know, it's just me, myself, and I. You know, my family is back here in Wisconsin, which is 2,000 plus miles away. So if I need to do something, I have to do it. And so if I need a little flexibility with my work, that would be greatly appreciated, because especially if it's on base, it's business hours, which are, what are they, like 8 to 4, 7 to 3, whatever the base hours are, which are my hours too. So if I need to do any paperwork or anything, I have to do it during business hours. So can I come a little later or leave a little early and get it taken care of? But I'll still get my work done, still meet my deadlines. And, you know, I think before the pandemic, a lot of people were really against that. But now it's shifted because they know that this work can be brought home and finished. It doesn't have to be done at my desk at work only, and it's only going to get done there. I can bring it home, finish it at night, finish it maybe on a Sunday even if I have to. Like, there's that possibility of getting it done another time, but still meets the deadline. And I think if a company is willing to be flexible with a military spouse, everyone's just going to benefit. And I think more companies are realizing that with everybody, a little bit of flexibility goes a long way. Especially when their spouse is on a deployment. You know, there's just that patience of, you know, we wake up not knowing what's going to happen every day, and we're in this kind of constant state of worry, and we're trying to just suppress that so we can move on. And so we're using work as a distraction, but we also need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And if work is just allowing us that time to go make that appointment with whatever we need to do, or take a day off for a mental health day, you know, I think that would just be really helpful.
Absolutely. On the reverse side, what do you think a spouse can do to better prepare themselves for that situation? I mean, I know it's difficult, but is there anything you think they can do, you know, from your experiences?
I think for me, one of the things that I should have done earlier is be okay with not being okay. So I felt like I had to hide. Like, it was just expected of me as a spouse to just be okay with the fact that he deployed and just to leave it as that. But I wasn't all the time. You know, I had my worries at night, and I felt like, should I talk to someone about this? Can I call a friend? Can I, you know, talk to another person about this? And luckily I had that other spouse that, you know, we did eventually reach out to each other and become each other's support system. But I think if I would have done that from the start, and talking to your company from the beginning and not being ashamed that you are a military spouse, and be open with them that there is a deployment. I will work with you as best as I can during that time frame, but your support would matter too. And being willing to put your foot down in the sense of, you know, this will be hard, I can get through it. Be open to ask for help and take it one step at a time. I think another thing that really helped me was having hobbies. I remember I had a countdown during the deployment, and it was just really hard to feel like the days were going so slow. So I got back into my hobby of home brewing, and that really helped because, you know, I would, one Saturday, I'd get everything and boil it and make it, and then a week later I did the dry hops and wait a couple weeks, and, you know, I would rack it, a couple weeks bottle, and then next thing you know, like 6 weeks gone by, and I have a beer. And 6 weeks just flew by, you know? So I'm calling friends up saying, hey, let's have a beer and try it out. And it just, hobbies really, you know, for your mental health are very beneficial, but they help with time. And it gets you to detox your brain from everything else, from work mode and stress mode of thinking of your spouse. And also making sure that you balance that work-life balance too. And so taking those time for your hobbies is important. And then I think if you have a good connection with someone at your work, who that you report to, and being able to be open with them about the situation, that you can talk to them and confide in them about the situation of either deployment or being a spouse, I think is, if you can, is beneficial too.
Awesome. So you've transitioned, your husband transitioned out of the military, which you also transitioned, moved back to Wisconsin. Through your experiences, what advice would you have for that spouse who's going through that same situation and they have to start thinking ahead? Okay, my husband or wife is going to be exiting the military here in the next 6 to 12 months.
Right.
What was that process like for you, and then what advice would you give a spouse that's going through that same situation?
Yeah, it was kind of a choppy transition because I didn't really know what to do. I've been away for 10 years, and between college and being in the military with our military family kind of lifestyle, and so I didn't touch my LinkedIn for like years. So I decided to finally update that and start reaching out to people, but I didn't know that something like the Chamber existed, or I know there's more and more nonprofits out there like Bunker, and now some more military spouse ones are coming out. But going to your home state that you are planning to move back to and start researching what type of chambers are available for either veterans or spouses, and reach out to them, let them know, hey, we're going to transition at this time. It'd be really great to connect with someone, and this is my field, and do you know of any people hiring or anything? Just making that connection. They can either say no or say hi, and I feel like more and more places are getting these nonprofits for military families for transitioning, and so reach out to them and make some phone calls. And if you can't find them, maybe call the Chamber of Commerce for that community you plan to go to and ask them if they have anything or if they know, or call the state itself and see what they have. Representatives are there for a reason. Call them, ask them what they know, what there is available for the state for military families coming back. And so I think that's just the biggest thing, is doing a little bit of research and connecting before you come back, and making those connections so when you are here, you kind of already stepped through those doors before you even probably find a house.
No, that's great. Appreciate you sharing that too. Last question. I know you're involved in the community, you're involved with multiple nonprofits, but what impact do you want to leave in the community?
It'd be really great to break the stigma of military spouses, whether that's hiring them or working with them, to show a different side of military spouses, to show that there's no shame in them and that there's strength in being a spouse. And I think it'd be really great to break that stigma and be one of those people to prove them wrong.
If you made it this far, likely you got some value from this video. Stick around and check out this video here, or you can check out this one here. And if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video.